Welcome back, guys. In this episode, we are going to get the wall to deal damage instead of just being like, we can see it, it works, but it doesn't deal damage. So we need to add that in. And we've already got the events stubbed out that'll do all that for us, and we just have to add the logic to the game, which actually isn't that difficult. So the damage stuff is really not too bad. Now, we're on the server in this event. Remember, we checked before we called this event that we are on the server. So we're doing all of this on the server. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the wall's enabled. We also want to make sure that the wall's actually shrunk. So to do that, we're going to check if the number of shrinks is greater than 0. And then we can make sure both of these are true by using an AND. So if both of these are true, then if we feed it into a branch, we can use this node if both of them are true. And the way that we're going to deal damage to the players is actually very simple. It's not very difficult to do at all. What we do is we get the game mode, and you remember how I am keeping a list of all the players in the game. So if I do get alive players, I've made a mistake here. I need to cast to my BR game mode first. And once I've done this, what I can do now is I can get the player list from here. So get player list, and we're going to get the alive players because we only really want to deal damage to players if they're alive. If a player's died, we really don't care about dealing damage to them if they're outside the wall. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the alive players and loop through them. So we're going to use a for each loop, and we're going to connect the for each loop up like this. And we're going to check if the player is on the plane. So is on plane. Because if the player's on the plane, we don't want to deal damage to them. We only want to deal damage once you've dropped out of the plane, because it's a little bit unfair if you're on the plane and you're getting dealt damage, right? So we're going to select not. So we're basically saying, are you not on the plane? And we need to check, are you not on the plane? And are you also not inside of the circle? Right, we need to check if you're inside the wall before we go damaging you. And that's really easy to do. We're going to get the player, so get the controlled pawn, and then get the horizontal distance to, and we're going to disconnect this, so hold Alt and plug it into here. So we're saying we want to get the horizontal distance between the controlled pawn and the safe zone or the wall. And if that is greater than the radius divided by 2, then we know that the player is outside of the wall, and then we can deal damage to them. And then we're going to go ahead and feed that into a branch and make sure that that is true before we go dealing damage. So we'll go into a branch here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to apply damage. And the person that caused the damage is the wall. So to get the wall, just do self, because this is inside of the wall blueprint. And the damage class, we'll make that the wall later on. For now, we can just go with damage type. That's okay. And we're going to make a variable called wall damage. So we'll just go to min radius and hit Control W, and I'm going to call this wall damage. And I'll call it wall damage per second, just so it's very clear that this is the amount of damage to deal per second. Now the player has 100 health, so I'm going to say the wall does 10 damage per second. So we need to take that value, hold Control, drag it in. And we're going to take the delta seconds and add a reroute node, and then I'm going to plug that into here. So we're multiplying the wall damage by per second by the delta seconds to get the amount that we want to deal each frame. So go ahead and plug that in. And then finally, the thing that we want to damage is the controlled pawn. So just go ahead and plug that in like that. Guys, I'm sorry if I'm losing my voice. If my voice changes or goes a little bit rough, it's just because there's so much talking in these videos. And it's hard to keep your voice in good shape doing all this speaking. But anyway, so we've got our wall now, and if I drop from the plane and I allow the wall to engulf me, you'll see, check it out, my health goes down when I'm outside of the wall. So that's really cool. One thing is, when the wall kills us, it's not going to do anything currently because of the fact that we don't have our killed by environment stuff set up. basically you only properly die if another player kills you. Actually, let's go back into the safe zone, by the way, and for the damage type, I'm going to select environmental damage. And one thing I also want is, I want the water to damage you. So if we click on the water and edit BP lake water, let's go ahead and make the water damage the player, because this really isn't actually that difficult. To make the water damage the player, what we're going to do is every tick, so right click and type tick, we're going to go here to make sure that we're on the server before we do this. We are going to get the game mode. And it's the exact same thing we did before. So we want to get the list of players and loop through all the players. So get a live player list for each player in the game. Go ahead. And we're going to get the actor eyes viewpoint. So get the player's eyes. And what we want to say is if the player's camera or the player's eyes are under the surface of the water, then take health off them. So we're going to break this vector here. And we're going to go ahead and check that the Z is less than that of the water's Z. So that's how we check that you're under the water. So get actor location, get the location of the water. And then break the water up. So use break vector and then check if that is less than that. And if it is, then we are going to deal damage to the player. That's pretty much it. So go ahead and get the controlled pawn, get controlled pawn, and apply damage to it. The damage causer is the water, so type self. The damage class is environmental. And the amount of damage to do is going to be the delta time multiplied by the damage rate. So float, and then we'll right click, promote to variable, water damage rate. And I'll make this 10. So once you compile this and save this, this should also now work, and let's go ahead and actually make sure it works as well. And while I'm at it, let's go ahead and click on the safe zone and edit that. And we're going to change the hold time back to what it was originally, which is 120. And we're going to change the shrink time to what it originally was. I think it was like 40 or something. I actually can't remember, but we'll just try 40. That should work. Okay, so we'll go back into the game. And all I want to do is just make sure that the water actually damages you. So, yeah. And we're going to wait till I'm in the game to do that, because we don't want to kill our player during the lobby. That will cause a lot of bugs and problems in the game. So we're going to hit F to drop from the plane here. And I got hurt by something, but I couldn't see what it was, so that's odd. But let's go ahead and just run under the surface of the water. We can't do that yet as well, because the water has collision. So go ahead and click on Edit Water. Click on the water surface, and then under the collision presets, turn off collision. So just click on no collision and turn the collision off for the water. We're going to walk under the water, and as you can see, it damages us. Now, it looks really bad under the water, but don't worry, we're going to add some post-processing later on so that you can actually see that you're under the water. It actually looks like you're underwater. We'll be doing that pretty soon. Okay, so let's actually just do the water effect now, because it's not too hard. So when I go under the water, you can see it looks awful. I mean, there's absolutely no way of knowing that you're under the water. So to make the underwater effect work, we're going to click on the water and go into the lake water material by double clicking on it. And then we just want it to be double-sided. So click on two-sided and then check the box that says two-sided. And that should mean that you can at least see it. There we go. So you can see the water under the water. So that's the first step to making it look better. The second step is we're going to use some post-processing. So go up to the search classes box up here and type in post-process volume. And we want the post-processor's volume to be the same as the water level. So we want it to be equal to the water level like that. And then you want to go to the brush shape and then just turn up the Z. So we're going to make sure it's nice and deep because our water goes really deep. So set it to something like 5,000 will be a good value. And move it down until it is equal with the surface of the water. Like that. So you can see it's floating right on the water. You may need to change your snap sizes in here as well to get better precision. But once that's done, we can set the X to something like 30,000 and set the Y to something like 30,000. And it should be really big. So let's go ahead and we'll just move it into the center of the map as well. And I'll make it a bit bigger. Let's make it something like 50,000. Because we really need to make sure that it spans out far enough that people can see it when they're in the water. So let's now add our water effect. So go down under the surface of the water. You can see still nothing happens. That's okay. Click on the post-process volume here. And we're going to start messing with some of these settings to get an underwater look going. So the first setting we're going to change, if we go down here, we're going to turn the blend radius to 10. And from there, we can start to mess with some of the other settings. So we're going to go up to the lens, and we're going to go to image effects, and we're going to turn on the vignette, and we're going to turn that up to 1. You'll now notice that it's a little bit darker, but when I go out of the water, that effect goes away. So you kind of get where I'm coming from now. Let's go to grain jitter, and we're going to change the grain jitter. In fact, we'll just leave that at 0. We don't need to change that. And then I'm going to go to the chromatic aberration, turn that on, and I'm going to set that to be 5. So that gives us kind of a really weird underwatery type effect now. And so that's a good starting point. What I also want to do is mess with the white balance. So we're going to go to color grading, white balance. And what I want to do is I want to turn the temperature to something like 2500. And I'm going to turn the tint to negative 0.75. And now you can see we get a really good sort of underwater look. So when I go under the surface of the water, we can actually now see that we're under the water, which is really helpful. And it just makes the game look so much nicer when you're underwater now. Inside of the BP save zone, I'm just going to make one last change. If we go to damage players and add a pin, I'm just going to fix a little bug that showed up before. If we get actor hidden in game, we want to only deal damage if the wall is not hidden. Because if we can't see the wall, it's going to be very bad if it's dealing us damage. So just make sure it's viewable in game first.